Good morning, everyone. Just to make sure that you can all hear me and see me, it's great to be here wherever you are tuned in from all over the world. Thank you very much for being part of the conversation. I am Wemileke Oscar Onye, so I'll be your moderator this morning. And we just want to make sure that everyone has enough time to settle in. So if you're joining us, or if you've been in the waiting room, feel free to join in, get comfortable. Very comfortable for the next 1 hour. I also want to take this time to tell our panelists to please switch on your cameras so we can all get a sense of where you are, who you are, but most importantly, to make sure you're not AI, to make sure you're real and you eat. So while they're switching on their cameras, for those who just joined us, thank you very much for taking the time to be here this morning. I know it's very cliche, but I have to do this just to lighten the mood a bit. Just type in the chat room what you had this morning for breakfast, okay? While everyone settles in and joins in the conversation. So while that is happening, I just want to give a quick context as to why we are here. First of all, thank you very much to each and every one of you for taking the time to be here. We are talking about fixing Nigeria's food insecurity, challenges, and of course, the way forward. Now, it's not news that Nigeria is in a food crisis. Climate change, inflation, rising food prices. If you've been to the market lately, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. Even the violent conflicts have been identified as some of the key drivers exacerbating the country's food security situation. Now, there have been escalating clashes between the nomadic cattle herders and farmers. And there are a lot of reasons in between. But the point is that we're in a dilemma, we're in sort of a crisis. Now, Nigeria relies heavily on agriculture. Approximately 2/3 of the labor force depends on farming and herding to make a living. And you might think that is very ordinary and mundane and doesn't have any major significance, but you understand why when you hear from some of our panelists. Now, since both the activities, that is the agriculture and the farming, depend heavily on weather patterns like rainfall, one cannot rule out the effect of climate change. And Nigeria's agriculture industry is extremely susceptible to the effects of climate change. Now, compounding the climate issue, we have armed groups like the Boko Haram, who are basically escalating an already terrible situation. Now, we have fuel costs rising, food inflation, food insecurity, and the one that really gets me, Nigerian children are experiencing severe food poverty. I watched a chat video on Instagram where a woman says she is forced to not eat for about 2 to 3 days so her kids and her children can find something to eat. So a number of us might have your 3 square meal, 2 square meals, but there's some people in Nigeria who don't eat for days in order for their children to eat. And that is one of the reasons we're here. Now, amidst all of this happening, there's an estimated 25 million people facing hunger. And President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has declared a state of emergency on food insecurity. So today we'll hear from a series of policymakers, practitioners, researchers on how we can not just tackle the crisis, but look for a way forward. So all of this has been made possible, obviously, by the Conversation Africa. And I welcome you to the Conversation Africa's virtual event, Fixing Food Insecurity in Nigeria, Challenges and the Way Forward. Now, this webinar is brought to you by the Conversation Africa, which is a website that works collaboratively with academics to share insights with non-academic audiences. So people like me, and I'm sure a couple of people attending who are not in the academia, they're basically going to distill all this information in layman's words so that we understand exactly what is going on. And of course, the Conversation Africa, you can find them at the website. That's www.theconversation.com. Now, this is the second virtual event in the Conversation Africa's virtual event series, which runs every Thursday for 2 weeks. And of course, a big thank you to our ever loyal and present media partner, that's New Central, the TV station, for supporting this conversation event. But before we move on very quickly, we have exactly 1 hour to have this conversation, but there's some housekeeping rules. First up is that questions will be dropped in the Q&A, which basically is in the chat room. So as we proceed, if there are any questions that you feel you need to ask, feel free to drop them in the chat room. We will see if we can address as many as we can, but panelists will also have the opportunity to respond in the chat room as well. So if there's anyone in particular your question is for, please state that as you ask the question. Number two is that the hashtag is fixing Nigeria's food insecurity, hashtag fixing Nigeria's food insecurity. That's just one word. So please, wherever you are watching from, feel free to tweet about it, share it on Facebook. And basically, let's get the conversation online and viral as well. And last but not the least is that this event has been live streamed on the Conversation Africa's Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Conversation Africa. So if you have friends, colleagues, people that you feel need to hear and watch what needs to be said this morning, please feel free to share that link with them. So we have, okay, just got confirmation that we're waiting for confirmation of our keynote speaker, who is engineer Abdullahi Abubakar. He has over 3 decades of experience in agricultural engineering and has played a very key role in advancing agricultural policies and mechanization in the country. We're looking very much to hearing from him. He's our keynote speaker for the day. We also have Dr. Kahn, who has more than 25 years experience working in social development and is currently the Deputy Representative of the Program of UNICEF Nigeria. There's also Dr. Adeyemi Tanimonure, who's an associate professor in the Department of Agricultural Economics, Obafemi Awolowo University, LAFIA, which is reputably the oldest and the best university in Nigeria. Some might debate that, but do that at your own peril. She completed her PhD in 2016 from the same university and is an expert in agribusiness management. We also have, last but not the least, Dr. Albert Chukwuma Okoli, holds a PhD in Defense and Strategic Studies from the Nigerian Defense Academy, MBA, and another PhD in History and International Studies from the Federal University of LAFIA, Nigeria. But I want us to quickly run through so that you know who exactly we're talking about. I will start off with Dr. Kahn. Good morning, Dr. Kahn. Can you hear me and see me?
Good morning. Yes, I can see you and hear you.
Okay.
Do you hear me well?
I hear you and I see you, and a little bit tells me, or should I say told me, that you have a slice of bread, jam, and cheese this morning. Would I be correct?
Yes, you're absolutely correct, with a cup of tea.
Oh yeah, the little bird left that out. Sorry, with a cup of tea. Great to have you with us from Abuja. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
We also have Dr. Okoli. Dr. Okoli, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, our esteemed moderator, Mr. Oscar.
Great to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm joining live from a small but ebullient community called Newman. Newman is in the southern part of Adamawa, northeast Nigeria.
Fantastic.
Glad to be with you. We've been on research here. Today I'm on research just to join you.
Thank you for taking with 2 PhDs. You've been a very busy man.
They were trying to chase some grant and feed our families, you know.
And I would love to hear how that is going so far. Thank you for being here. And of course, last but not the least, we have Dr. Adeyemi Tanimonure. Good morning, man. Dr. Adeyemi? Dr. Adeyemi, are you there? I think I saw her earlier on. If she is here. Okay, we'll come back to Dr. Victoria in a couple of minutes. So unfortunately, we're still expecting the director, who's our keynote speaker. He'll be joining us. A bit of technical issues we're trying to resolve. But that leaves room for me to kick off with Dr. Okoli. Dr. Okoli, good to have you with us this morning. So I promise we won't take too much of your time, but I wanted to use you to just lay a framework of why we're here. You heard everything I said this morning about, the status and the issue of food insecurity. Now, you've extensively written and researched Nigeria's internal security challenges, and I need you to help our audience who are outside Nigeria, who might not really understand what's happening, the landscape better. Can you give us like a brief understanding of the country's three biggest security challenges, particularly those that are affecting food crisis? How bad is it, and how does this translate to the common man?
Oh yeah, thank you once more, dear moderator, for having me, and thank you, the Conversation Africa crew out there. Of course, my teaming audience, I could count as much as 80-something there. So I'm pleased to be here. The discourse is on an important subject matter: food security, food insecurity, food crisis. Well, which one is the case really in Nigeria? I think we may be working with the operational concept of food security and, of course, insecurity. Now, talking about the security landscape of the country, I may want to approach it from what I term the triple dilemma. In other words, the triple conundrum of contemporary security situation in Nigeria. And by that, I mean the complex security threat manifesting variously in different parts of Nigeria. One is a farmer-herder conflict. Another one is terrorism. And the third one is banditry. You see, these crises, security crises, I mean, are actually national in nature and spread. As a matter of fact, they are much more pronounced in northern part of Nigeria, but doesn't presuppose the fact that other parts of the country are actually immune to them. The occurrences are not just becoming prevalent, they are also assuming some dynamics, interesting dynamics. One, they are getting protracted. Another, they are also getting intractable. Okay? The Northwest, for example, has been afflicted with what we know as a Boko Haram insurgency, and indeed other insurgencies, because we are not probably talking in terms of a monolithic pattern of terrorism in that case. And then if we move to the northeast, for instance, northwest, for instance, and there's this phenomenon we refer to as banditry, an aggravated violence that is also afflicting the region. Okay, it is not only peculiar to the northwestern part of the country, it's also reasonably manifest in the north central and the other parts of the country. Then we have the farmer-herder conflict, which is actually a major threat in the wider northern Nigeria, but I think the critical hub, the hotbed of the crisis is actually north central Nigeria. Okay, these occurrences, like I said in passing, are not just prevalent, they are becoming rather intractable and protracted. Okay, and the fact is that if you watch the trend, the dynamics, and of course the trajectories over the years, we find a bit of opportunism, okay, in their manifestations. Okay, one is actually reinforcing the other. For instance, you find that trend, okay, particularly between banditry and terrorism. If you look at the existing literature on that subject matter, there's this paradigm that seeks to explain that, and it's actually called crime-terror nexus. The fact that terrorism and banditry are often in mutual coalitions, okay? So, and then these trends are escalating. You find out that looking at the trend over the years, you find out that they are coalescing and they're also converging into dangerous and nebulous mix, which even makes the understanding and the mitigation very problematic. And we are dealing with a complex security challenge that holds critical implications for food productivity, agricultural productivity generally, and food security in particular, okay? They bring outcomes that negate sustainable agricultural productivity, particularly in those critical food basins of the country, northern Nigeria, north central Nigeria, and all of that, okay? If you look at the impact, you find elements of mass population displacement. And we are talking about rural population that are, largely agrarian, okay? You're talking about, rural population. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I'm so sorry to interject. Confirmation that our keynote speaker is around, the director is around. But I love most of what you said, and I would like to touch on that, especially during the Q&A section.
Okay.
Thank you very much. You can mute your microphone.
So thank you. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you very much. I will want to formally again reintroduce our keynote speaker for this morning. He is a very seasoned engineer. And when I talk about engineering, we're talking about that has to do with agriculture. Engineer Abubakar has over 3 decades of experience in agricultural engineering and played a very key role in advancing agricultural policies and mechanization in the country. As a graduate of the University of Maiduguri with a BSc in agricultural engineering, and has served in various capacities, including a principal program officer at NEPAD Nigeria. He is a fellow of the Nigerian Institution of Agricultural Engineers and the Corporate Administration Institute of Nigeria, as well as a member of the Nigerian Society of Engineers and the American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers. Now, he's represented Nigeria at numerous international forums and, of course, published works on agricultural innovation. We are extremely excited to have him with us. And ladies and gentlemen, please, wherever you are, if you can't give an emoji round of applause, just give him a round of applause wherever you are. Ladies and gentlemen, please do make welcome Engineer Abubakar, Abdullahi Abubakar. Thank you very much for being here, sir.
Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. I'm very sorry I could not join much earlier than now because of the technological problems. But thank God I'm on now.
Fantastic.
So if I may
just to break the ice before you run in, everyone has been talking about what they had for breakfast. So we'd like to know what you had for breakfast, sir.
Yes. Unfortunately, it may not be in anybody's menu because it is a traditional dish called namwake. It is made from flour, wheat flour, and a mixture of cowpea ground together. So it is a very good starter for one. I can continue this discussion even without eating for the whole day because of that first opening that I have had. So that is the dish I have taken. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to all of you attending, we'll get a sample of the dish across to you, courtesy Engineer Abubakar. Over to you, sir.
Yes. Should I start?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. By way of preamble, we all know that Nigeria, despite its vast agricultural potential, faces a significant food insecurity crisis. This issue is compounded by factors such as climate change, poor infrastructure, and limited access to resources by our farmers. To address this food insecurity, particularly in Nigeria this time around, Nigeria's economic development, social stability, and overall well-being, it is imperative that the government look at it holistically. By way of definition, we know food security exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preference for an active and healthy life. By that understanding, we try as much as possible as government to see that we provide that ecosystem. Understanding the root causes of food insecurity. There are basically 5. One of which is low agricultural productivity. 2 is the climate change, that is the uncertainty in cultivation and harvesting. 3 is the conflict and instability around the farms. Then 4, poor infrastructure. Finally, the post-harvest losses that is being experienced. It is very, very serious in our wisdom. It has to come up with strategies for fixing the Nigerian food insecurity. One of which is the investment in agricultural infrastructure. Modern farming practices, as we all know, need a lot of technology and equipment. It is also imperative to improve the storage facilities to avoid post-harvest losses. It is also in our own good to enhance transportation networks so that produce can reach their destination in good time and with all the safety it requires. It is also incumbent to support smallholder farmers, because in Nigeria in particular, the smallholders are about 80% of the farming population. This support can come in so many ways, like providing access to credit and inputs, implement the extension services so that the new technologies being provided by researchers will get to the farmers, and ensure we create market linkages so that when these produce are produced, they can be taken to where they can be sold with good premium and in good time. The issue of addressing the climate change is also there. That is, promoting the climate smart agriculture so that we encourage the adoption of farming practices that are resilient to climate change, such as the agroforestry, crop rotation, and water conservation. Also, we invest in renewable energy. That also will support the development of renewable energy sources to reduce the reliance on fossil fuel and mitigate climate change impacts. Another one is the implementation of disaster risk reduction measures, which seek to develop early warning system and disaster preparedness plan to minimize the negative effect of extreme weather events. We also look at promotion of the food processing and value addition. We incentivize local food processing. We improve food safety standards. We develop markets, export markets, so that the Nigerian food product governance policy. We improve the land tenure security because we ensure that farmers have secured land rights to incentivize investment and long-term agricultural development. Promote agricultural research and development. We invest in research to develop new crop varieties, improving farming techniques, and address emerging agricultural challenges. We also strengthen food governance. That is by establishing effective policies and institutions to coordinate agricultural development efforts and ensure food security. With all this in place, government responses in fixing food insecurity as follows. We implement measures aimed at promoting food and nutrition by undertaking dry season farming cultivation. Last year, about 118,000 hectares in 15 states, wheat was cultivated, which has an output of 474,000 metric tons. And by that, it has drastically reduced our importation. In response to the presidential directives, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security distributed about 42,000 metric tons of assorted food commodities from the federal government strategic food reserve. We also procure and distributed to all states and the FCT, that is the Federal Capital Territory, about 58,000 metric tons of meal rice, really to dampen the escalating prices in the market. We also engage our researchers in trying to fortify crops with vitamin A micronutrient to enrich nutrition content and health value of our food commodities. There is a provision of production enablers. In response to the persistent food inflation, the following measures were undertaken by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security to boost production. One of which we distributed 60,000 metric tons of improved seeds. We encourage farmers to use improved seeds and not grain because they can expect the high potential yield of that seed. About 887 metric tons of seedlings, 128,000 value kits. By value kits, it could be for rice, it could be for maize. What it means is that a package is prepared with fertilizer, agrochemical, that's herbicide, the seed that can cater for at least 0.5 of a hectare. That is given to a farmer, all encompassing, so that when he plants that, he will expect his harvest, a bumper one for that matter. We also received 2,150,734 bags of fertilizer from the Central Bank of Nigeria for distribution to farmers free of charge. This is ongoing. We started almost about 2 months ago, but because of some hiccups here and there, we are yet to conclude that assignment, but we are on it. And farmers are very happy with that gesture from the government. We also consider improvement of farmland security with provision of additional resources to agro rangers and other security agencies so that they can at least to some extent help farmers to be on their farms. As you may be aware, there is a lot of kidnapping, banditry in some areas. So we try to bring in these security agencies to forestall this kind of happening. We also see to the strengthening of mechanization. By doing that, we are able to sign an MOU with John Deere for the acquisition of 2,000 units of tractors with implements and 100 units of combined harvesters every year for the next 5 years. So also another MOU has been signed with tractors for the supply of 2,000 units of tractors with implements in the next 5 years. Additionally, an approval has been granted to Greener Hub Agri-Mechanization Program for the procurement of 1,000 units of tractors with implements to establish 53 service centers farmers nationwide. Again, we have looked at upscaling agricultural research activities. Based on that, we have developed 23 improved crop varieties by the National Agricultural Research Institute, certified and released by the National Varietal Release Committee. We have also improved our storage facilities so that with the expected bumper harvest, they will be stored appropriately and in good health. We have also improved the extension services to farmers. As you may be aware, the ratio between the farmer and extension agent is very wide. Extension and one-stop extension service delivery centers nationwide. We have also trained physically 3,350 extension agents in the state agricultural development projects across the country. This is ongoing because we need to train more so that they can actually reach out to the farmer. Establish demonstration plots for technology diffusion on agricultural practices. All these and many more are going on concurrently and in different ecological zones. We also provide rural infrastructure to help our farmers reach their farms and evacuate their products to the nearest markets. We have constructed about 77.8 kilometers of asphalt roads. We have constructed 130.9 kilometers of earthen roads. And we have also provided 102 motorized and solar-powered boreholes. We have installed 6,504 solar street lights, all with a view to curbing the rural-urban drift. We are trying as much as possible to make the rural area habitable and to avoid coming to the cities and crowding the cities. So we provide all amenities that are presently in the cities so that it can also be in the rural areas. We have also set up an agro-processing and value addition centers. This was done under the implementation of the Special Agro-Processing Zones program. Presently, we have about 8 states that are at the pilot stage. Looking at what they will be able to do, we can escalate it to other states. Basically, at those special processing centers, rice will be processed, tomato, groundnuts, sesame, maize, ginger, soya, cassava, cocoa, livestock, dairy, poultry, and aquaculture. We also established 2 agribusiness incubation centers in the Federal University of Lokoja, Kogi State, and Michael Okpara University of Agriculture, Umudike. And also trying to see how we can make these incubation centers very viable for other people to get some kind of technologies that are present there, which they can adapt in their own localities. We have completed 8 metric tons per hour large-scale integrated rice mill processing in Suleja, the Niger State. So all these are interventions that government are doing in order to curb the high food prices and in some extent, even the deficit we are looking at. By way of conclusion, by implementing these strategies, Nigeria can address its food insecurity challenges and build a more resilient and prosperous agricultural sector. A sustainable and food-secured Nigeria is essential for achieving economic growth, poverty reduction, and social stability. On this note, I want to rest my case. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Engineer Abubakar. Don't worry, you're not in front of a tribunal. And the last time I checked, you're an engineer, not a lawyer. But the case has been rested. But thank you very much for that, sir. Do you mind tilting your camera down a bit so we can get a better view of your head? But very laudable projects, I must say, and the initiatives are one that one cannot ignore. But I want to first of all thank you for taking the time for that. Most of these things they fly over our heads. You know, in the academic world, you guys know, but to the layman, they really don't. They don't go through all the newspapers and all the press clippings, which takes me to Dr. Kahn. Dr. Kahn, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so I'm going to come to you, but Dr. Okoli, my apologies again for cutting you short before the keynote address. I'll come back to you in a minute. But Dr. Kahn, now you, I mean, we've heard the director talk about some of the initiatives that the government is rolling out to tackle the problem. Now, in your opinion, because you represent an organization that is hands-on on the ground, and you look at data and look at the real-life impact and translation of some of these initiatives. In your opinion, has the government navigated the challenge of food insecurity enough, particularly in the light of some of the issues that we have now, and is it enough?
I think the government is trying their best with the current situation, and we have also heard all the systemic problems that are happening in Nigeria. The esteemed engineer already mentioned some of the things that the government is already doing. For example, the declaration of nationwide state of emergency, the release of seed, temporary suspension of tariff on some food products, but also government is also trying to unlock some funding to respond to the current dire situation. I just want to go back to the situation a little bit. WFP, another UN agency, they do this survey called cadre harmonization. They did it this year, where the findings are quite dire, which shows that close to 32 million people in 26 states and FCT, not in all states, they will have the acute food insecurity, which means that the people in those places will not know from where the next food will come from. So the government is trying best, but I think there are other things that also can take place in order to address the current situation. And I can talk about it a little bit if the time allows. For example, some of the strategies can be prioritized. So definitely the food insecurity, the agricultural sector is one of, or if not the most important sector, but there are other sectors that also needs to come very swiftly to address this situation. Because the food and nutrition situation is a multi-sectoral issue. For example, in the health system, we know that we need to scale up high impact maternal and young children nutrition intervention. And there are some fancy names like multiple micronutrient supplements. That's mainly for pregnant women. Also, small quantity nutrition supplements for children between 6 to 24. So these are the things that can actually prevent the nutrition, malnutrition status of the children. So this is something that the government can actually accelerate. In addition to that, whenever there is malnutrition among women and children, but particularly for children, there has to be a responsive system where children can get treatment. Currently, 3 million children in Nigeria, they're suffering from severe acute malnutrition, but with the current services, only 1 million children can actually get proper treatment. In addition to the health system, we also can look into at the household level to improve the food insecurity. For example, encouraging at every household the micro-gardening, use of bio-fortification varieties such as that will also improve at the household level the situation. And then finally, for the social protection system also needs to be sensitive to address this current food insecurity. Are we looking at, like, with the current social protection schemes to provide cash to the household level, especially in those areas where we know that there is a high level of malnutrition? Can we also think of some systemic changes, for example, paid paternity leave, paid maternity leave, for the parents to be aware how the children should have proper nutrition? So yes, the government is doing a lot, but I think we can look into more comprehensively into other areas as well.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Kahn. Very, very well put. And I know that 1 hour, or even in your case, maybe 20 minutes or so is not enough. But I think for those who are listening, they can relate to some of the things you said. We have some questions coming in for the attendees. Please feel free to go to the Q&A and put in your questions. Aki, I see you. I see your question, and there's an anonymous attendee also with a question. So please just drop your questions in there, and some of the panelists might be able to address that. I want to quickly move over to Dr. Victoria Tanimonure. So let me get the pronunciation right. For those who
Tanimonure.
Yes. Tanimonure. Oh, who knows what is inside?
Yes, you got it. Give me
Bingo.
Yeah.
Great to have you with us. So, I mean, you've heard from Dr. Kahn, and of course, our keynote speaker in the person of our dear engineer himself, Abubakar. Now, I wanted to touch on very quickly. If I was going to ask you about strategies, some have been mentioned. We've had, like, for example, CBN giving away fertilizer. We've had the processing center set up. But in your opinion, what strategies should be prioritized to strengthen what I call the resilience of Nigeria's food systems against future disruptions? So whether it's climate change or conflict, like Dr. Okoli mentioned, or any other factor whatsoever, what do you think should be put in place?
Yeah, thank you very much, Bimileke. You know, when engineer Abdullahi was making his presentation, I was asking myself a number of questions. And my friends that are, part of the audience, some of them were sending questions to me that, what is going on? Are those points, are they true? Are they correct? Well, as you know, I'm a lecturer and at the same time a researcher. And I'll be talking to us this morning on my experiences on the field. That is, and I want to just summarize that the challenge, the problem we are having in Nigeria today is lack of synergy between relevant stakeholders. If you look at all the problems they've itemized, a good number of them, I have them here. And if you want to summarize them, you see that we have sociocultural problems, we have economic problems amidst them, we have problem with lack of economic problem, we have lack of enough money into research, we have lack of technology, lack of innovation, we have poor policy, and so on and so forth. And we have all these challenges because there is no synergy amidst the relevant stakeholders. We always talk about the gown, we talk about the town, we talk about government, we talk about industry. So there is no synergy. And as long as we remain this way, I don't think we're going to achieve anything very soon. When Engineer Abdullahi was talking, Nigeria is so dynamic. Even if you are not looking, you will see. And if you have now made up your mind to look, you will see more than what you bargained for. I said I'll be sharing my experiences, on the field. A couple of months ago, I have a number of projects at hand, but there is one I'm currently, handling, and it has to do with transforming food system in Africa through water, just water. We are talking about climate change, and what informed that research has to do with the problem of climate change. And Bimileke, I'm sure you know that there is this scheme in Nigeria, Ogun Osun River Basin. And we went around the entire Southwest. Thank God Dr. Okoli is here to tell us what is going on in the northern parts of the country. So I'll be doing more, about what is going on in the southern west of Nigeria. We went around, and by the time we were going, we just want to look at all the facilities they have in this Ogun Osun River Basin. And I saw, I told you, when you're not looking at Nigeria, you will see. But when you have decided to look, you will see more than what you are bargaining for. I tell you that there are so many facilities in all these sites, but they are not working. What informed Ogun Osun River Basin is so that we'll be able to produce around the year, water. And I was surprised that we have so much large bodies of water scattered around Nigeria. Do you know that the largest gorge in Africa is found in Nigeria? The fourth largest in the entire world is there in Oyo State. I saw it, I was there, but no activity is going on. We left the place for other places, large bodies of water. In fact, the northern part of Oyo State, where I came from, I never knew we have such large bodies of water. What are they doing? Nothing is going on. That's number one. Number two, they've talked about farmers' herdsmen conflict. It is real. I'm not going to mention communities, the names of communities for security purpose. There was a community when we were entering into the place. Everybody we see on bike. If you see a man on a bike with a gun, if you see 2 men, 2 guns. If there are 3 men, there are 3 guns. And it got to a point I was like, what is going on here? What is going on? Farmers, herdsmen conflict. And so they are battle ready. I remember one of them telling me that you use pen as lecturers. We use gun here, as our pen. That kind of situation. And again, we are talking about lack of labor. Agriculture is not attractive to our youth because we still use hoes and cutlass. Thank God you're a Yoruba man. You remember the song we normally sing when we were in primary school? That without cutlasses and hoes, our education is not complete. The song is outdated. Many youths are moving to the city. What are they looking for? Greener pasture. Do you understand what I'm saying? So now, if you don't make, they have lack of labor. Do you know that in Nigeria, the farmers are interviewed. They went as far as Cameroon, Republic of Niger, to go and look for labor that will work on. They said the kind of labor they have here, they are not reliable. If they come today, tomorrow you may not see them again. So they have to go. I'm going to shock you with this again. He said there is no food. It's not as if those people, if you northern part of Oyo State is tagged the food basket of Oyo State. But I was surprised, they are farming there. But you know that their outputs are actually being sold to the neighboring countries. Why? They have better value for their produce. Their currency is better than ours. And it's not, by the time I came back from the field, I started looking. So the food they're exporting to the neighboring countries, what are they doing with it? So they will now bring this same food
back
to
to
the
us.
South, into the nation again. And you know what will have happened to the prices of such food? 2 years ago, I carried out a research on tomato. To date, we import tomato from Cameroon, from Ghana, from Benin Republic. The tomato I was at my 12 market, and I saw, and they told me the weight, everything. But look at our own tomato. To date, 40% of tomato we produce in Nigeria, goes to waste. I remember there was a woman I saw, and she could not even offload her tomato because by the time she got there, tomato from other places were already, in the markets. And the price
I think
was
the recent crash in the price of tomato, I think that happened sometime last month or early this month.
I'm talking about 2 years ago. I was there, not that they said, I personally was there. Last year, it was planting I worked on. I covered the Southwest and South-South. and come and see, you know, thank God, Engineer Abdullahi talked about infrastructure. In fact, we're supposed to move from Benin City to a particular part in Delta State. We couldn't make it. The situation of the road was nothing to write home about. And listen to the farmers. They have greater percentage of their produce being wasted at the end of the day. So when engineer was talking about all these things, I was asking myself, even in the local government where I am, I mean, if a central local government, we have only one extension agent. It is not, they can go and find out. I may not know what is obtainable in the northern part of the country, but for Southwest, I can give you data. I can give you facts and figures. So what exactly is going on? So what I'm saying, in the summary, the challenge we have in Nigeria is lack of synergy between relevant stakeholders. And thank God Engineer Abdullahi is there. I want you to please help us tell our honorable minister that he should look, because when he looks, he will see beyond, you know, all these things that we are just putting down on papers. And I tell you, he does not have to leave Abuja, wherever, you know, it may be. And that's why we have universities all over the nation. You know, if you almost all the states in Nigeria, we have federal universities. All the states, I'm sure we have state universities. These are the people that we can come around the table and discuss this matter. And we should not use this top-down approach that we have been using. It is not going to take us anywhere. The farmers, they have their challenges.
Yeah, that's one of the why. Absolutely, Dr. Victoria. I think that's one of the reasons why we have this conversation. And sorry to interject, but thank you very much for the hands-on and real-life experience. I can't help but, first of all, thank you for embarking on such. It's one thing to be academically inclined to do such, but there's also the question of your safety, your personal safety as well, when you go and move around these places. So thank you for the labor of love, first of all. The points are very valid, and I think you summarized it with the lack of synergy. I think I speak for a number of Nigerians when I say that we hear and see a lot of initiatives, a lot of things put in the media and the press, but when it comes to the actual translation for the farmer on the ground, like you rightly pointed out, it's a completely different story. Let me take this very quickly to Dr. Okoli. Still with us? How are you, sir? I think I might need to take you as a final before we go into some of the Q&As. Dr. Okoli, you've heard a lot that has been said by Dr. Tanimonure. And of course, we also have had quite an impressive list by the director himself in terms of what has been done. But without taking too much of the time that we have left, because we should be rounding up soon, from your own perspective, if we turned to a solutions frame of mind, and a lot of things have been listed by Dr. Victoria that has, you know, is very gloomy. But if we're going to go from a solutions frame of mind, what are the most urgent factors that you feel should be addressed to tackle the insecurity issue in Nigeria? Because it's kind of directly related to how the farmers can access their farmlands, how they can farm, and even do the job that they set out to do. What immediate interventions do you feel can mitigate the impact of violent conflicts on agricultural productivity?
I thank you. I was actually threatening to protest, but it turned out that I was pleasantly interrupted, given the strong intervention that has come from the director and, of course, my colleague over there. So I'm consoled. Now, I was saying something before the interruption. I said that, you see, given the landscape of insecurity, there is a major disruption in the rural areas, and we are talking about actually important for agrarian activities. Farmers are displaced, some are orphaned, widowed, some are killed. And indeed, the displacement is a major challenge in terms of food, agricultural productivity, and food security in wider northern Nigeria, and of course, other parts of Nigeria. So talking about the solution now, I think it's about security, and the security is the first and the last calling of the state. Of course, my elementary understanding social contract theory tells me that the state actually exists to security of property. So the state should reinvent itself. As a matter of fact, the problem here is the fact that the state has not been able to live up to its calling. Our case is what some scholars have described as an absentee kind, a state that is grossly deficient in terms of governability quotient. Okay, if we consider its effective and the coercive competencies to rule and to facilitate governance, you find a lot of lack in that respect. And so that is why the place ought to be interrogated. You find that the peculiarity of our state that it is not even jealous about its sovereignty and territoriality. Here is a state that can afford to trade off on even matters of sovereignty and territoriality. Here is a state that is grossly deficient in terms of fending for the people and protecting and guarding its territory. So the state ought to reinvent itself in terms of its capacity to rule and to ensure that a facet of its territories are secured. Again, there is a need to rethink our approach to national security provisioning. Okay, this overarching centralist, statist, and even kinetic approach to national security ought to be reconsidered. We need to devolve the mechanism of security. We need to be that it becomes multi-tier and it becomes bottom to the extent that critical stakeholders playing at the grassroots, for instance, the vigilantes and the youth vanguards, the volunteer forces here and there in the hinterlands are actually incorporated in the wider national security architecture. We need to also ensure that our intervention, which has been characteristically, not proactive, it tends to have been more reactive and lethargic. We need to also ensure that there is a change of attitude in that respect. We need to be sufficiently proactive, but even in terms of anti or counter banditry and the counter-terrorism intervention, the operational principle, the operational logic should cease to be this tendency to react, okay? And of course, this defensive and offensive approach, we should rather assume some sort of preemptive and the preventive attitude to some of these critical issues. We should take building capacity for early warning seriously, building capacity for rapid response, and building capacity for perhaps the utilization, deployment of technology, drones, and all other technological competencies to also seek to mitigate some of these prevailing security challenges. The bottom line is that the state ought to take seriously. We should also ensure that the grossly undergoverned spheres of our territory, the so-called ungoverned spaces, ought to be reclaimed from the forces of the underworld, the disparate elements that maraude various ungoverned and undergoverned territories in the hinterlands. We should begin to reclaim these territories and ensure that we provide sufficient governance in those spheres. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Okoli. You finished me with your very simple grammar, but the points are equally valid, and I thank you for the insight. I think your addition to this discuss is one that sheds a realistic approach to this. Before I move on to Dr. Kahn, who would finalize on speaking on this, just wanted to acknowledge in the Q&A, Victoria, thank you very much for your question. Victoria's comment goes along the line of, let's call a spade, and I'm quoting her, let's call a spade. Our road network in Nigeria between the rural communities and urban centers is horrible. until this major problem is addressed, we cannot make much progress. Dr. Ezekiel, I see you. Unfortunately, I won't be able to take your 2 minutes of submission, but the doctor is talking along the lines of needing to be factual on the way forward to achieve food safety. And of course, we have Ben Caleb. Food is produced in the rural areas and the areas are insecure. How will the John Deere machines be used? Food insecurity in Nigeria is the security on governed zones. Do we agree with? Thanks for that, Ben. The anonymous attendee, Manesse, what measures are in place to ensure the fertilizers given by the Central Bank of Nigeria reach the target areas without compromise? A very valid question. Aki, thanking the guest speaker for the presentation and reeling out government initiatives. But what are the impacts of these initiatives? We need to know the status of the initiatives in terms of implementation. These are very valid questions and contributions. But Dr. Kahn, I'll come to you finally, because we do need to round up. You have extensive experience working in social development, especially when it comes to the area of program guidance, monitoring framework, and leveraging resources for more than 30 countries. So you have, what I call, a broader view of what Nigeria is going through. Based on your experience, what strategies do you think we should prioritize to strengthen the resilience of Nigeria's food systems? You've heard from the government, you've heard from those on ground. In your expert opinion, what are the top three, for example?
Thank you. I think we have heard very interesting angles of food insecurity, food and nutrition insecurity, and all are very, very valid. For me, the most important element is multi-sectoral approach, because food insecurity or food and nutrition insecurity cannot be tackled by looking at just one part of the issue or the problem. And that's why at the vice president's level, there is a task force that's actually looking at the food insecurity by bringing all the stakeholders together. So this is extremely important in my view, and this has worked not in Nigeria. We're just starting, but in many countries, the multi-sectoral collaboration is extremely important, and also the collaboration both vertically as well as horizontally. So what strategies that are being developed at the federal and state level needs to be translated at the LGA as well as at the world level. The second element that we have not touched actually here is, and I totally agree that there are many issues, but in order for us to improve the nutrition, especially among children, because I represent a children's agency, one of the main barriers that we have seen also the lack of diverse diets. Yes, the affordability is a problem, accessibility is also a problem, but we have also seen even those families that have food, but because they don't have diversity in their diet, they're not getting proper nutrition. I'll give you some examples. In some parts of Nigeria, children are not given, even if they can afford, egg to children till they're 3 years of age because of some beliefs. So there is a huge potential that we are missing here by bringing the societal approach and bringing all these traditional and religious leaders in the communities and families to come together to understand what are the barriers in terms of the social beliefs and so on and so forth. And then finally, I think we also need to talk about the finance for overall food and nutrition. Are there adequate financial allocation at all levels for ensuring that all the elements that the engineer has mentioned, and also that there's security aspect, but also making sure that from farm to fork, all the barriers that are encountered, do we have allocation from the government, from the public sector, to make sure that they are able to bring food from the farm to the table? So I think these are the three areas that I really would like us to think about comprehensively through this multi-sectoral approach to address some of these issues that we have heard in the last 1 hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kahn. Very well said and put together in terms of the summary. And I think your first point of the stakeholders coming together ties in with what Dr. Victoria was talking about when she mentioned or made reference to lack of synergy. And I think that's very key moving forward. I will give just a minute to summarize their final thoughts. I will go to Dr. Victoria and then, of course, to Dr. Okoli. Dr. Victoria? And I hear Engineer Abubakar is here. He's back. We lost his signal for a while. So if you're here, sir, we would like to have you give like a closing remark before we close the session. Dr. Victoria, over to you.
Okay, yeah, definitely there is no one-size-fits-all solution to this problem. We all know. As I said, and Dr. Kahn too, buttressed the points that I made when I started, that we need to come around the table, all the relevant stakeholders. And by the time we are coming together, what exactly are we looking out for? Number one, all problems must be identified using bottom-top approach. There are still so many problems. All this one that we are mentioning, we may still have some at the grassroots that are not known to us. Let's get them identified. Number two, we prefer bottom-top approach solution. It's not maybe a solution that somebody is coming from somewhere and come and just dump it on us. It is Nigerians' problem, and we must solve them locally. Then lastly, let us use the power of comparative advantage. All of us, we always refer to pyramid of groundnuts in the north. My university was built with cocoa money because then there was this, we focus on the comparative advantage. Let us use this power. And not only that, let us use the power of cooperative. Let's put our farmers into cooperative. Let them be able to interact. And, whatever may be their problem, let them bring it forth. Let them, bring in the researchers. We are available. That's why we are here. Some of us, we are still in Nigeria because we believe we have solutions to the problem of this nation. And I'm not ready to go anywhere. I can go there.
You're not going.
What is obtainable there.
We're not going to let you go.
I'm not even going. I go there. I see what is obtainable there. I was like, oh my goodness, what are we doing exactly in Nigeria? I'm telling you, we are going to make progress. And we are talking about innovation. I'm talking about, we should use the power of comparative advantage, power of cooperative, power of innovation, power of mechanization. We have more than enough resources in Nigeria, Gimileke. We have water. We should not even be crying of food crisis anywhere. If we are going to harness all the resources that nature has provided unto us, we are going to harness them productively. So let's look into this. And I know that if we do, we are going to make, progress in this nation.
Thank you very much for that, Victoria. Sometimes I'm worried about saying the fact that Nigeria is too blessed. That maybe that's a curse. The fact that we're too blessed is a curse. But I think management is one of the top. Management is one of the top things that we need to understand. A lot of countries who don't have a tenth of or a third of what we have are producing twice as much. So it's about the people, not about the land or the resources. Dr. Okoli, final thoughts, please.
Well, just to reiterate the point that the state of the food sector in Nigeria has a lot to do with the state of the rural economy. And security is a critical factor in that regard. Okay, some of those security issues we highlighted play a major role in bringing about outcomes that negate food productivity and food security. So government should take security seriously, particularly security of the vast rural hinterlands, okay, where you have the bulk of agrarian populations. The fact that they are not safe in their specific spheres of domain and mainstay, okay, means a lot for the state of food security or insecurity. the fact that they are being displaced by bandits, by terrorists, by Haida militants, and the rest of other non-state actors. Of course, it tells us exactly what the state of our food sector, our agricultural sector is. And for us who are interested in contemporary security studies, we can't interrogate the state enough. Okay, and that's why I emphasize the fact that the state has actually demonstrated gross incompetence in terms of showing capacity to govern. And so it ought to reinvent itself. It needs to grow appreciable governability quotient to ensure that it fulfills its primary mission, which is security of life, security of livelihood, and security of property. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Okoli. I can't help but segue a bit into the discourse of state policing. That discussion is still very much in the polity and, of course, in the news, where there's a debate as to whether or not the states should have their own policing. I live in Lagos, and I look at initiatives by the state government like Onjeko, which is like a food discount market. Every Sunday it happens, and they just reactivated it where there's 25% discount on all foods. This has to do with the, what I call it, from farm to fork. So this is the fork part of it, where people can actually walk into a place and get quality food, good food, healthy food, homegrown and affordable at the same time. Those are the practical manifestations of some of the things that we're saying at the state level. So I think the state also has a role to play in terms of security and, of course, getting the food to the people that need it. But thank you very much for that, Dr. Okoli. I think Dr. Abubakar is still here. Engineer, sorry. Is the engineer here? Can we have him on? Just to give a final, if it's still on. I know I saw him earlier on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, great to have
you very much.
Your camera. Is it possible to have your camera on? Sir?
Okay. Yes.
Thank you. Unless you are eating, sir.
Can you see me?
Not yet. But carry on.
I'm not.
we can hear you.
So. I've eaten for 24 hours. Anyway, I think my camera is having problems.
Carry on, sir.
Just your final. I'm using my handset, not my laptop. So yes. So my final word is that really the government is trying its best to see that we have wrapped up production. We are trying as much as possible to increase production and productivity because the population is increasing and the land is shrinking. Shrinking by way of estates are being developed where agricultural lands are available. They are being converted to residential. So we know that the land is not enough. Even though based on the statistics, we have over 70 million arable land in the country, while we are using only 40% of that. The reason is not perfect because there are areas that we need to really clear the land so that it can be arable. And then whatever it is, we also want to see that people engage in farming. So as the population is increasing, we are trying to encourage the youth in particular to engage in farming. That means we have to bring in modern farming technology because I'm sure the youth are not ready to go to farm using hoe and cutlasses. So that is why the issue of mechanization becomes eminent. We just have to deploy mechanization to our agricultural farms. And it is also good to say that we have to have all year round farming because if we agree that we have water bodies around and we are not utilizing them, these are the things that are causing flood everywhere and in so many places. But if we can dam water, we can use it during the dry season and we can exactly harvest twice what we can harvest in the wet season. Because for irrigation, you determine the water usage by the crop and you have already established your water consumption by that particular crop. So we plant where we have comparative advantage of this crop and all the barriers that are there that will hinder transporting them to the nearest place, because it has been said that we don't have lack of food, but we have lack of distribution. You will find out that in other areas they have glut, while in other areas they are in deficit. So it is a matter of how do you transport it to that place. It becomes interesting that we have to also look at our road networks, our means of transportation of food from one location to the other. You find out that beans is grown in the northeast, for example, but is most eaten in the southwest. So if you cannot get it across the southwest, then there is problem. So also other things like gari that is most processed in the southwest, people in the northeast are also eating gari. So if they cannot get it across, it's another problem. So by and large, we have to look at the gamut of all these and see how it can be rectified. The insecurity issue also is very important. As my colleagues were also talking about it, it is the measure that we have now taken to see how we can collaborate with the Civil Defense Corps to see how they can really build up that particular department, agro rangers, so that they can be all over the country. For now, I understand they have deployed about 1,000, but 1,000 is not enough. So gradually, I'm sure they are going to man some of our farms so that at least there will be security of our farmers there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Abubakar. And for those who just joined in, that was the keynote speaker for today. He's the Director of Agriculture in the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, Engineer Abdullahi Abubakar, with his final thoughts. On that note, ladies... Sorry?
Minister of Agriculture and Food Security.
Okay, and food security.
Yes.
Very timely.
Thank you.
Very timely. Thank you very much for your contributions, and of course the keynote address. Really enjoyed and gave insight as to what exactly the government has been doing. But like most of the moderators also contributed, it's one thing to have a list of all these achievements and initiatives, but there has to be synergy. Like you rightly said, there's no lack of food, but there is definitely a lack of distribution. There's lack of synergy. There's lack of security, and these are things that need to be worked on at the state and federal level. Before I hand over to for the closing remarks, you met her earlier on, but I want to quickly hand over to Dr. Candice Bailey. She's a strategic initiatives editor at The Conversation Africa. But before that, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you that sent in questions. I see about 22. To Ibrahim, Victoria, Dr. Onibio, Bem, Caleb. Thank you very much. Sorry we couldn't address all of it, but I'm sure some of it have been touched on during the discourse this afternoon. Menese, Aki, thank you very much for your contributions. I am Bimileke Oscar Onisa. It's been a pleasure moderating this very enlightening conversation. Some very scary facts have been put out there, but there's also hopefully light at the end of that tunnel, and the conversation still goes on. For those interested, the Conversation Africa's virtual event series continues next week. So be part of the discussion by registering to attend. If you check the chat room, you'll see the links there. The next one is September the 5th. And after that, we have September 12th. September 5th is South Africa's Climate Change Adaptation Plan, Fit for Purpose. And September 12th is the Green Switch. How viable is South Africa's move to clean energy? It has been quite a delight and a pleasure. And at this juncture, I will hand over to Dr. Candice Bailey, the Strategic Initiatives Editor at The Conversation Africa. Do have a lovely afternoon, everyone.
Thanks so much, Oscar. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm just going to take another 2 minutes of your time. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to the panelists this afternoon. Engineer Abubakar, Dr. Okoli, Dr. Tanimonure, Dr. Kahn, your insights were completely amazing. As Oscar said, it was really an insightful discussion. It's a complex and it's an intricate issue, and I think we've really just touched the surface, but we've gotten to some really important issues that, as you said, the conversation will go on. I also want to say thank you to you as the audience today. Thank you for being part of our conversation. We exist to inform people like yourselves of issues in the world, and we exist to make sure that research meets ordinary people and that they can be better informed and make better decisions. And I think our virtual series has done that today. We've been running our virtual series for about 4 years now, and it's really an attempt to get policymakers and scientists and practitioners around the same table. And I'm so glad that today we could facilitate that discussion. As Oscar said, there is another one coming up next week, a reality check. Is South Africa's climate adaptation ready for, still fit for purpose? If you haven't registered yet, please do register. The link is in the chat box. We do look forward to you being part of the conversation again. And thank you for your time once again. Have a good afternoon, everybody.